Department of Labor and Industry, working on the Workers' Compensation Modernization Program. With me today, I've got a couple of folks from our ADR unit. I have Brian Mack, and I also have Richard Davis. They're going to be kind of helping me through this answer hour as we run through some of the questions and some of the issues that we're seeing that are impacting our legal users right now. So a few housekeeping items just before we get started. I did go ahead and I muted everybody upon entry to this meeting. So just to minimize background noise, since we've got a number of people on the call, I just ask that you all remain on mute unless you need to ask a question that you don't want to ask in the chat. Our preference is that you do ask those questions in the chat. That just kind of helps us track them a little bit better and make sure that we're not missing anything. Also, this meeting is being recorded, and we will go ahead and we'll get a copy of it out on our website as soon as we can after this answer hour. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just hop right into our content for today. So kind of a brief agenda. We have some release updates from 11.4. So for those of you who are on our meeting on Tuesday, this is going to be a pretty similar schedule. Our new release will go out tonight, so we'll have some updates on that in our next answer hour. But that slide will mostly be the same. What has changed a little bit is our known issues slide. So we'll run through some of the known issues or some of the things that people are experiencing right now. We'll have some time for Q&A, and in our Q&A session, or once we get to that slide, I am actually going to hand it over to Richard. I believe most of you just received a communication regarding some things that are impactful in the legal community, so I'm going to have him kind of recap that and go over that. And then finally, we'll run through our upcoming answer hour sessions for next week. So I know that Brad mentioned this on Tuesday, but we did have a release on the 24th, which would have been last Tuesday, I believe. Typically, our releases are going to go out on Thursday nights, but due to the holiday last week, we decided to do a smaller release on Tuesday rather than just totally forgo having a release that week. So that's why you're seeing kind of a shorter list of things that were addressed this week. Just because we had a little bit less time and a little bit less to work with last week. So the things that were addressed were the inability to access related disputes in some instances. We did have some service of process designees missing from service lists for firms. We did have some issues with attorney IDs not validating on web forms. And then this was a pretty major one. We did remove the requirement on the DLI side for a conference to be scheduled prior to a medical or rehab response being filed. So if you need to file a medical or rehab response, you should see the option to do that as soon as you are notified of that. You should not have to wait for a conference to be scheduled. So getting into the known issues, and some of these were identified on our call the other day. I'll kind of run through all of these. So slowness with calendar functionality. What we have determined, we did some retests on this, and it looks like there's some slowness with OAH and DLI events loading on the calendar. And the unavailability is also very slow. So we do have defects in the pipeline addressing the slowness in trying to mark that functionality. And Ellie, I just saw your comment with that unavailability. In many instances, it's just taking a really, really long time. But we do have the issues with the marking unavailability and the slowness with those OAH calendar events loading. There are some instances where people are selecting, I prefer not to say, when they are initiating disputes. In this case, documents are not generating. There have been some delays with certification requests. Richard, do you want to speak to that a little bit further?
Yeah, no, it helps if I turn my mic on. Good afternoon, everyone. I do just want to communicate to the group that we are doing our conferences. I know some people have chimed in, and I think even the most recent one we had earlier this week say, "Hey, we haven't received notice of our conference yet, what have you." We're working through a backlog, and we've had some issues, internally, both in terms of staff turnover, getting the system set up, and everything. But the primary message I just want to say to everyone is we are scheduling for those things that we got as soon as the system launched in early November. We're sort of working, I want to say, like, back to front, um, to try to clear out that backlog. But just bear with us. We're getting as many of those cleared out of our backlog each day, and you should be getting those soon. If you just want a status, or if you just feel as though you're concern, you can certainly reach out to me, to the help desk, whatever, and we'll be able to follow up with you, and happy to follow up with you. But I think the main message we wanted to communicate to the group is conferences are being scheduled, because I know that there are some folks who just were under the impression that we were not. So just bear with us. We ask for your continued patience, and if you do have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard.
Um,
Moving down the list, we have had some reports of issues with the notice of appearance filings. We do have that documented, but we also were able to kind of identify exactly where that issue is occurring and what's causing that issue. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to demonstrate that after we run through this slide. And after Richard runs through just that communication that went out, I'll go ahead and I'll just demonstrate that so you all can make sure that you're completing every step. We have had some reports of hyperlinks and emails going to not authorized pages. So in that instance, it's one of two things. It's either that the user doesn't have authorization to view the page, or it's sometimes linking to an internal page that you all would not be authorized to view as external users. So we are working on that, working to get that resolved. We do still have some instances of legal support unable to view and access all related attorneys' cases and claims. That's mostly impacting just our legacy files. So anything that would have been filed prior to Campus Go Live. There are still some intermittent document upload issues with some users and some documents. So this one has been a little bit more difficult to pinpoint because it is very intermittent and it is very specific to certain users, certain files, and even some document types. So please keep us updated. I know some of you have been very patient with this one. We are still working on it. We're trying to figure out exactly what is causing those kind of edge case situations to function in that way. We do also have a review documents button that's not functioning on some of those filings. So the document that you can click just to take a look at the filing itself, not always functioning. We have been receiving still some questions about accessing claims, so accessing either older claims or multiple dates of injury, and then also locating WIDs. So as far as locating WIDs, I'm actually going to go ahead again and turn that one over to Richard if you want to elaborate a little bit on that one, and I can open up this web page for us.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. I think there are a couple of things that we'll speak to here. So we can talk about WIDs briefly, and we'll talk about accessing claims as well. So if you go to, it looks like Angie clicked on the link. I see the wheels. The information, there we go, that's listed on this particular page just provides some details around the process for capturing WID data. We know that we had some folks who were concerned both because of the formatting of the number. There was some concern or just some confusion about that, trying to figure out what that meant using the EE versus what we had previously called the WID number. So we tried to clarify and explain the process not only for obtaining it, but for making sure that it is listed properly and loaded properly into the system. You can also contact us at the department to get that information if you're not able to get it directly through campus. So there are quite a few steps there, just additional information that should be able to assist anyone who's looking for that WID number to move forward uh, in campus and with a claim. So I think it's pretty straightforward. The information is available. Angie, if you just want to maybe put the link into the chat,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
that'd be great. But that should definitely be your starting point for anyone who has questions about finding a WID or what it should look like. Again, that whole formatting issue with EE is something that we've heard a healthy amount of questions about as well. So all that stuff is listed there on that page, and just encourage anyone and everyone to go there uh, for for details. Backing up a bit to claims access. So as Angie mentioned, we did send out uh, a message, and you're welcome, Sharon.
Okay.
We did send out a Gov delivery message, and I put the link into the chat box. So I already had it teed up for mine, Angie. That's why I couldn't cut and paste the other one in there.
Oh, no
So if you haven't already had an opportunity to, I would ask folks to take a look at the Gov delivery message because it does spell out a couple of points related to accessing information in campus. And you can see it on the screen there. One of the things, I think we've seen it in our chats, and we wanted to make sure we called it out, was any and all claims access. So there is a process where we can provide any and all claims access. It's a little bit different from what we've done in the past, but there are steps that are in place that will allow you to do it. If you just look at the information we have listed there, there are a couple of different ways that you can request this, and whichever one fits your particular needs, there are a few different options that are available, including contacting the help desk directly for assistance. I think that if you do go through the process of contacting the help desk, just a reminder, it is a manual process on our end, so there is a little bit of a delay there. It may take a day or so before you get what you need, but certainly our group has been trained on that. They're aware of it. Even before this message was sent out, we connected with our partners in the CRT area to make sure that they were aware and could handle the follow-ups and the inquiries that might come out of this. The second piece goes directly back to something that Angie mentioned before, and we'll talk about here, and she'll demo for us in a bit around the notice of appearance. We know that some folks have had issues with the notice of appearance, and we wanted to make sure that that got resolved as quickly as possible because the NOA is a big deal. One of the reasons why it's a big deal is because what we're asking our attorney partners to do is to file a notice of appearance to access claim data for that information that was in our previous system. So items that were on the books, as it were, before November 2nd, we are asking that now that we've migrated that data over to campus to access it, we will need an NOA on file so we can make sure that we're tying it back appropriately. There's some data privacy, considerations there, some security issues. So we just want to make sure that we're being cautious. So the hope is that with the fixes that we've implemented for the NOA, it will work more smoothly than it has up to this point. But just understand that the rationale for it is directly tied to some of the issues that we articulated there. So hopefully that will allow people to move forward and get the information that they need and get access to their claims and remove some of the barriers that maybe you've experienced here over the past couple of weeks. Um, let's see. I see a couple of comments here in the chat. I'm unable to file NOA on a couple of cases because they don't show up on the website.
Yeah, Ellie, I think it would be helpful if you could send those directly to me, the ones that you're having issues with.
Okay.
Obviously, leave some private information out and we can research those. I did see that we have um, a few additional questions here. We had a question regarding marking unavailability, which Tyler, I think you went ahead and answered. So if you need to mark unavailability for multiple days, you can click copy in edit mode and then click paste to all the other days that you'd like to replicate that exact time off. And Ellie, yeah, your comment just regarding mailing and faxing NOAs, that's obviously something that we've been keeping on kind of the forefront of our thoughts as we're working through this process. So I know that that's something that Brad and Richard both are very, very clear we may need in the future. If that is something that becomes available in the future, we will certainly make sure that we communicate that to the legal community.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. And let's see here. So I think with that, since we went ahead and we covered that notice of appearance, I'm going to go ahead and we've got our standard Campus Central page here. I think we plug that every single time just to kind of let you guys know what we're working on. But what I do want to show you all is something that Richard was just talking about, specifically that filing of the notice of appearance and that little glitch that we're seeing with people kind of missing it. It's a very like nuanced thing where people are kind of missing a really short step. And we do know that it is an issue. We have it logged, but for the time being, we just kind of wanted to show you all exactly how to work around it if you need to. So I am going to go ahead and I'm filing a notice of appearance here. I am logged in as a legal assistant. So the reason I wanted to show you all the filing from a legal assistant perspective is um, many of you are support professionals. You can file these on behalf of your related attorneys. If you're group administrators, or if you're even just curious about how those relationships need to work, we are going to go ahead and have a legal group admin answer hour after this one. It is just a quick 30-minute meeting, but you all are certainly welcome to join that one and we can get into a little bit more of the group admin questions and concerns with the legal community. So I'm just going to go ahead and click access a case, file my notice of appearance or representation, do my locate a claim step here. And now this is the spot that is kind of causing some issues for people. So I apologize, right now it's moving a little bit slow in my test system. It is moving faster than this, I know, in the production environment. But what essentially has been happening is these little radio buttons from time to time will not display before the next button becomes available and active. So if you don't select one of these, obviously, we're not going to know what you're trying to file your notice of appearance for. So definitely make sure with this step, and it may just take a couple extra seconds to make sure that they show up. Definitely make sure that you are either selecting a claim or case. So I would assume in 99% of the cases, I'm not an attorney, but Richard or Brian could probably back me up here. Most of the time, you all are probably going to be filing directly into a claim. So I'm going to do just that. Now, since I'm logged in as a legal assistant, I'm going to select the attorney that I'm filing on behalf of. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to choose another attorney here. I'm going to say that we are representing the employer and the insurer. We have no limits to our representation. And then I need to type in my attorney ID here, so let me see if I remember it. And of course, so in this instance, since I'm filing on behalf of another attorney and I'm Melissa, I would need to type in another attorney's ID. So now on the service recipient screen, I can obviously choose the people who I need to serve. Brian and Mac, I think you're on the phone. Do you want to speak a little bit to the service recipients if we do not have an attorney on file?
Yeah, sure, Angie. Hi, everyone. This is Brian Mack. If you know, for example, that someone is represented and they're not in this list already, well, you could do what Angie's about to do there, which is click on the Add Service Recipient button. You can then put in the name of who it is that you want to serve. And under role, this is something which is not the most intuitive thing, and I had to ask about it myself. What you're picking here is who are you representing? Who is the person acting on behalf of? So if I'm to be the employee's attorney, then Angie would click employee. If I'm to be the insurer's attorney, or the employer's attorney, I would click one of those. Then you go in and manually add in the address. If you're going to, even though I might be in the system or the attorney you're adding might already be in the system, when you're adding a service recipient at this stage, you do need to put it in manually. And then when you come to the Affidavit of Service section, that will be a manual service by mail, which you can see there. So once you do the Affidavit of Service, once it submits, you'll need to then go in, print it, and mail it to, in this case, me.
Thank you so much, Brian. So I'll go ahead and I will just complete this process so that we can get this one filed and I can show you all what that actually looks like.
What happens, one thing right there where you're at, Angie, I've seen this happen a couple times where if you somehow, like what Angie did there, she did a space bar over after the word Lewis. And if you do that, it's going to think that's a space character, which then doesn't match up with your login ID. So what I've told people a couple times, go back to the very end of the word Lewis and then hit delete a couple times to wipe out any spaces that you have. And there, it looks exactly the same, Melissa Lewis, but now it's Melissa Lewis without a space after her name. It's just a little thing, but apparently that happens.
Mm-hmm. And another just really quick thing with that. So you noticed I had already checked the box after I changed my signature. I checked that box. If I go back and I delete the space, you're going to notice that the submit form is still grayed out. That is because I changed my signature. Since I changed my signature, I just need to really quickly re-acknowledge that my signature is correct. In this case, it is. And then we can submit our form.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification too, Angie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, Brian, for running through that. So while this processes, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take a look at the chat. I think we've got quite a few messages. So let's see here. The filter feature on the My Claims and the My Disputes does not appear to be working for employee names. It looks like that may be an isolated instance.
Yeah, so Angie, Tyler chimed in and did say that we've documented that. We'll document it and act on that. You can filter by the WID function, but name, not so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Tyler and Richard. And Mike, Mike put a very valuable message in the chat. So Mike is one of our help desk leads. He's our supervisor, and he just mentioned that if anyone is experiencing a long turnaround with your cert request, please contact the help desk. We can do a quick check to look at the status of the request. And And then I see here, is there a different procedure for employees with two last names or a hyphenated last name? Wendy, could you possibly elaborate on that a little bit further? I wonder if you're asking about the notice of appearance, or are you asking about signing? I'll just await your response in the chat. While I'm waiting for that, I'm just going to go ahead just to kind of follow through on Brian's comments, adding that user as a service recipient. You can see here, now that we look at the affidavit of service, we've got Brian's address listed, and he is there as well. You can print this off and mail it. And then there's also an address label for Brian that's available as well.
I'd like to do a little bit of a tip on this, Angie, if we could.
Yeah.
What people are going to see is those 4 icons at the top right of the document that you're viewing right now. Normally, we'd think, hey, let's just hit the print icon. That's the one on the left. If you do that, it will print the whole page as you see it, which includes that right sidebar, which, of course, isn't how we'd want to send things. So a better thing to do is what Angie's doing right here, is to hit download. Then you can send it to your own printer, your own computer, or another way would just be to open it after hitting that download. And then when you open it, it's now, if you print it from here, it's now going to print cleanly without that right sidebar. Just
Awesome.
like that.
Thank you so much, Brian. That's great. Awesome. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back into the slides. And it looks like we've got some questions in the chat. What other options are there to locate a file, to file an NOA if the information we have is different than Dolly's, such as not matching up with the SSN, WID, or date of injury? So Brian or Richard, please feel free to chime in. What you can do, or one option that I recommend, is for people to actually complete what's called the request assistance with unreported injury form. So I might have clicked out of my test system a little too soon. I can get back in there and I can show you all how this works. So in this instance, what you can do if you have conflicts, or if you're just not sure, you can do this request for guidance with unreported injury. This can be used if you're not sure if something has been reported to DLI, or if you just aren't sure if the information's correct. So in this instance, you would obviously be submitting on behalf of someone else. You'd put your relationship to the injured worker, so the attorney, and then you would just fill out the rest of this. You only have to fill out the required fields, but obviously the more information you can give us, the better off we're going to be. If you can find the employer if you know it. If the employer does not exist for some reason, you can click employer not found and just provide what information you do have. So we understand, obviously, in some situations, maybe it's an uninsured employer, and so they're not in our database. You can always type them in the employer not found. Same with the insurer. If you know the insurer, you can use this lookup to search for one. If you don't find what you're looking for, you can always click insurer not found and type in what you do know. Or if you know that the employer is uninsured, you can also indicate that right here, that the insurer, it does not exist for this employer because they are uninsured. What happens after this form is submitted is that it goes to our compliance department and it is reviewed. What we can do after this is it creates what's called a claim shell in our system, and we can research these and we can figure out what date of injury it belongs with if we already have a date of injury, or we can request that the insurance company complete the filings necessary to get this claim reported to DLI. So that is one step that you can take if that information doesn't match up, or if you are just questioning that information. Brian or Richard, anything to add to that?
I think Elle asked a fair question about what happens after, for them, once CRT takes a look at the claim shell and either reaches out to the insurer or gets the claim set up. Does the party, the attorney who submitted that initial claim information, do they get contacted? And I don't know the answer to that myself.
Yeah, I'm actually not 100% sure on that answer myself. I don't know if Mike, if you would know that by chance. Otherwise, that's a takeaway that we can take to compliance and figure out their business process.
And another option, as far as, to add to what Angie's been explaining, that one option of when there is no claim in campus, which happens sometimes, a claim isn't reported for whatever reason, one option would be, as Angie went through, which is request assistance with an unreported injury, which basically queues up a temporary claim file for that injury. Another thing that could be done, and this is the way, what has been done in the past too, would be just contact that employer and insurer and let them know, hey, guys, you need to report a first reported injury. And then again, yet a third option for what happens if there's no claim reported is people can file a claim petition at OAH if they figure that's the way they want to go.
Thank you, Brian. That's all very helpful. And we can certainly follow up with compliance to see what the business process is around notification of any parties with those research claim shells. And Wendy, thanks for that clarification. You mentioned another legal assistant in your firm was having trouble searching for an employee with 2 last names in order to file the NOA. So what I would recommend in that instance is just try it a few different ways. I would try with the both names hyphenated. You also may want to try with both names with just a space, or even just with each last name. Unfortunately, with that, it's going to be dependent on how the insurance company reports it. So there's not really a standard. I know sometimes they report a last name as a middle name if there are multiple last names. So I would just recommend trying kind of multiple avenues. There also are the situations where you can get around using the last name if you go ahead and use, I think it is the combination of the WID and the date of injury. So if you're able to get a WID for that individual, you may be able to just bypass the last name altogether. But that's what I would kind of recommend. Great, next question. My notice of appearance will not let me select the attorney I'm filing the NOA for. How can this be fixed? I'm thinking it may have me listed as the attorney instead of the legal assistant. Tanya, we'll look at your account specifically and see what's going on. You may not have any relationship set up as a possibility as well. We can take a look at that one.
And this is Brian. I added also a little bit more on as a response to that question from Tanya also.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. All right. Sheila, after saving a request for certification as a draft this morning, I was unable to access the document and continue the filing process. When I went back to it and I had to start over, I thought this had been a known issue and had been resolved. Is that not the case? We'll take that one down to research that, I think. Or Brian, yeah.
I can speak to that. One issue we have found with problems of getting back into the draft is when you're looking at the draft under your My Forms, it'll show that it's a draft. There's actually going to be on that line that identifies your draft, there's actually 2 hyperlinks that you could click on. One is a hyperlink under the column Form Type, and one is a hyperlink under the column Associated ID. If you want to get back into the form which is your draft, you need to click on the hyperlink under Form Type. that gets you back to the draft itself. If you try to click on the hyperlink for the associated ID, that tries to throw you into the dispute or the claim. So try that and see if that takes care of it. Click on the hyperlink under the column form type. If
Awesome.
that doesn't do it, let us know. We want to know about that.
Awesome, thanks. And Ellie, I think we got your questions. We'll certainly take that to CRT regarding that claim shell process. Veronica, you mentioned you're having the same issues as Sheila. You can't view the same drafts. And let's see here. Paralegals in our firm are listed as other legal representatives instead of legal assistants. I am not sure where I can change their designation. If you need to change someone's job title, you can certainly send a request to our help desk. In some instances, it's a pretty quick fix. In others, it will require a database change. As long as they're listed as other legal representatives, they should be able to do everything that the paralegals and legal assistants can do in campus. But if you need to change that, please just send a request to the help desk and we can get that looked at for you. And Ellie, so you said, so we submit the form and then have to check back on the website to see if we can find the person there. Just a little confused on the process. So again, with that, I'm going to check and see if there's any kind of notification from compliance on the, not as familiar with that business process. So we can certainly look into that. Okay, Tanya, you're saying it's loading your information into the attorney information and won't let you change it. So yeah, we can certainly look if we need to change your user type. I'm going to have you go ahead and send me an email. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you wouldn't mind sending me an email and just letting me know what firm you work for and what your title should be in campus, and we can get that changed for you. I received an email that a new document was available in a rehab case, but clicking on the link goes to page not found. Yes, that is a known issue. We know that's happening specifically with those rehab cases. Chances are that you received that from our VOC rehab unit. So we are working on that one diligently to get that fixed, but that is a known issue on our end. We are getting affidavits of service listing all the firms, attorneys, paralegals, and legal assistants instead of just the assigned attorney on the matter and their assistant. They are not getting served with the documents. They are just being listed. So in those instances, you would want to make sure that you have your firm's service of process designee information set up correctly. Whoever you have listed as your service of process designee is who should be receiving legal service, along with the attorney who is listed on the file. So Victoria, if you want to send an email just with your firm information, I can look into that a little bit further. We can also talk about that in our group management answer hour that's coming up here in about 20 minutes. Tina, you guys are having issues with saved drafts. I think we need to take that away and look at that one. Okay, when we receive notice of documents available for review is the only information that is going to be available in the email, the doc link, the last four of the WID, and the employee's initials. A few attorneys and admins in our office have received these notices on cases and they're not connected to them and get the no access, so they contact me as the administrator to figure it out. Will more identifying information be going into the email notifications in the future? That's really good feedback. Obviously, we have a lot of security measures in place just to make sure that we don't have unauthorized information going out via email. We need to keep it pretty secure. So that's some feedback that we've been getting, and I know Brad has taken that down, and we'll take that down again. We can certainly look into expanding that, but it would require some passes by legal and security in our IT department. All right, next one. I filed a request for certification this morning in a matter where the employee had several previous attorneys. I didn't select those attorneys to be served, but the affidavit of service shows them all being electronically served. Does it serve all electronic parties listed, regardless of whether you select to serve them or not? So that's a really good question. What typically will happen with the affidavit of service is if somebody is listed as a service of process designee for a specific entity, if you click on that entity, it is automatically going to check the service of process designees. If you would like to send Sheila in that email that you're going to send Brian, go ahead and send that example of that case. We can look into that one and see if it's just a case of a number of service of process designees being listed for the firm. All right. I think I'm going to bypass the question slide since I think we've been kind of running through that as we go. And I did want to just hit on our answer hours for next week. So next week, our answer hour for the law firms is going to be Thursday. I believe Jenny in our communications department already sent that out, so you all should have received that. As I mentioned, we do have our group admin answer hour right after this. So for those of you who are group administrators, please feel free to join in on that one. As of right now, we only have our answer hour scheduled out through the 12th. We're kind of trying to figure out our cadence of how these are going to continue. I know we have kind of some specialty answer hours that we're throwing in there as well with some other groups. So kind of trying to come up with a little bit more of a steady cadence for how these are going to continue. And obviously we've got a few weeks of holidays in there that kind of complicate the schedule. So keep posted or kind of keep your ear to the ground, and we will communicate those future answer hour dates as we finalize that schedule. So with that, I think we could probably give you all a little bit of time back, or as Richard likes to say, we'll give you all the gift of time. Looks like we don't have any other questions in the chat right now, and we'll make sure we get that marked down, your comment that you just made. But Richard, Brian, any further comments?
Just thank everyone for coming out today. We do have some follow-ups. I know I've been texting and emailing with people during the course of the answer hour today. We'll follow up either to have some continued offline conversations or to get more details around the challenges that you're experiencing. But just work with us and we'll work with you and we'll get there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll echo everything that Richard said. We really appreciate your patience. We appreciate you all coming to these answer hours and sharing your experiences with us. It definitely makes this a little bit easier for us so we know what's going on with you all. And again, we will look forward to hearing from you all via email, and we will talk to you all at the answer hour next week. So have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks
so much, everyone.